Well. Going down the well. A conversation with a driller.
Welcome to this episode of Health IQ. Today we have an important topic for all of our people who live in eastern New Mexico. Many of us receive our water from private wells, and our municipalities also receive their water from wells. And I thought we were all on the same aquifer, but maybe not, but it all still plays together, right? Joining me today is Cody Moberly. He is a well digger or driller, and he lives in Field, which is a really small community in eastern New Mexico. Our crew today is Joyce Runyon and Bobby Hockaday, and I am Brenda Bishop. Cody, thank you for driving all the way to Tucumcari, 50 miles, you said, today to record this podcast. I'm excited to learn more about the water supply for our county and for eastern New Mexico. Our climate and health contractor, Sadie Rush, was not able to join us today, but she prepared these questions that we're going to talk about. And but I thought first, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your business? And I'm not sure what everybody would even understand what a well driller does.
Well, we drill holes in the ground for water. That seems easy, but it's really not. So I mostly did livestock wells and house wells occasionally. And so that's about all kind of rural.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but it's big piece of equipment that you use to drill this, and it requires being able to find the water and
there's a lot to it, finding the perfect spot, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 spots to find the perfect spot. You hit dry holes.
Yes, and then I assume after you drill, you would actually put the pumps and all that in as well.
Yeah, well, usually we develop the well afterwards, try to develop with air or baling, depending on if there's enough water. Baling is you bale to develop a less water well. There's not much air, and air develops it the other way. Try to develop them, get an idea if you got enough water there for what they needed for, say for how many cattle they needed or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And so, in addition to the hole in the ground, what else goes into having a well on your property? You get it drilled, but you have, like I would assume, some kind of casing and a pump, of course.
Yeah, you put in normally PVC casing, steel casing rust. Mm-hmm. So you go with the PVC casing. Usually gravel packet to keep the sand and things out to mm-hmm. filter the water. And then cement the top in where nothing can enter from the top.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that, yeah.
Yeah, we pump cement in the top, and it seals anything off to keep from getting in the water supply.
Well, because we are opening a hole to the water.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we're going to take every precaution possible.
Uh-huh. Can you tell us a little bit about the different types of wells? You said that there's livestock wells and there's wells for people's homes. Is there something that makes them different? Or
not necessarily different. You get a different permit for a house well compared to livestock. That's about the only difference. And they're developed all the same, and everything's pretty much the same.
And then different areas of the county or other counties would have harder to get to water, or?
Yes, there's a lot of places that's hard, traveling to get in and out in the livestock country, canyons mm-hmm. and stuff. It's tough to drill in town, too, if you're in the backyard and you've got equipment out front and hoses running mm-hmm. beside the house and something in the alley. It's not easy there either. It's never easy.
But in some wells, you have to go a lot deeper than others?
Yes, some are a lot deeper than others. Most of the wells around here, you go to what we call the red bed. It's a red clay formation. It's usually the bottom of the well. where the water stops,
Where the water stops. Okay. Because the clay would be holding it in.
Yeah, the clay holds it. It's the floor.
So I know that our public water systems, they're monitored, they're treated. But if you had a private well that you used for your drinking especially, or your household well, what are some things that we need to do to make sure we keep it safe, the water in there safe?
Keep it from having leaks. Don't have leaks, anything you get to running back down the top of the well. And if you're not sure, have it tested once a year maybe.
If you had a line leakage, I know that we had to put our water source for our house is 1,300 feet away from our house.
Yeah.
So if we have a line, and not only would we lose a lot of water, but it would cause contamination within that water source.
Yes, it could. Yes. Be a good idea to kind of flush the system out a little.
Sure. And you said that you could actually have it tested, and there are places that, what kind of place would you look for if you were to look for a place to have your water well tested?
Like the local water company in town, or there's places, Amarillo and Lubbock, you can send. It's usually a $5 or $10 test, and so it's not really expensive.
Yeah, and you just look for a water lab?
Yes, just find a water lab.
Okay. And so as we think about, I don't even know anymore how many years we have been in drought.
Forever, it seems like.
Drought, of course, I'm sure is a threat to our water supply here in Coy County. Are there other threats to our water supply?
Oh, no, probably drought is probably the biggest threat.
Okay. And what are some of the signs, if we've had a well, that your well is starting to run out of water?
Well, you'll start to, when it gets down the bottom, there'll be a lot of mud and stuff. You'll start going through pumps faster, and you'll know. Yeah.
Well, no.
Things will start going wrong. It'll start getting expensive.
So you were telling us as we were visiting about a normal well that's running well that would keep your house running well would pump how many gallons of water per minute?
Well, it takes 2 gallons a minute for your appliances.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a minimum. The washing machine take 2 gallons a minute. If that's all you've got, you may have to plan and not wash the clothes and do dishes at the same time or something like that. But at least 2 gallons a minute, you can live pretty comfortably.
Mm-hmm. And but what would be ideal?
Ideal would be 10 gallons a minute.
10 gallons.
5 or 10 gallons a minute is good.
But most of us don't probably have 10 gallons.
Places do.
Mm-hmm.
Places do. I had an example one time. I drilled a well for a guy who'd raised 5 kids. Said we got by with 2 gallons a minute. It was tough, and the well it got bad. I moved over 30 feet and got 10 gallons a minute. He couldn't believe it. Said we struggled all those years, and it was that close.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be right there next to it. You never know.
So you talked about having to try to find water sources or to make sure that as you're looking to drill that, finding that right area, what is the technique you use to do that?
We use what we call witching with a couple rods. It's usually pretty accurate, but sometimes it isn't. About the time I think I'm getting good, we'll hit a dry hole. So, but normally it's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm. It's been around a long time.
It's been around forever, yeah.
I actually know some people who are like really good water witchers.
Yeah, yeah.
So as we sort of talked about that low water, and I can not imagine having just that little bit of water and trying to have to plan with a busy family, only being able to do one load of wash at a time and not being able to do anything else. That would be really tough. I have had times when we didn't take do dishes and take showers at the same time, but that would be a little easier, I guess. So we have that sign about our water would be like it get muddy and run real slow. But what are some tips that we could do to lower our water usage so that we wouldn't get to that point?
Fix your leaks. Toilets leak a lot, and you may not notice it. You need to check those. A little bit of food dye in there, and it'll come through. You'll see it's leaking. Dripping faucets. Usually a leak is relatively cheap to fix. Unless the long run, then you're replacing the well. You're talking mega bucks.
So that causes damage to the well too if you have like your toilet that's leaking, and I guess you put that dye, the food color, in the tank.
Put it in the tank, yeah, and if it comes through, you've got a leak, and your well running there 2 gallons a minute. If that's all it's making, it's doing that 24 hours a day. Sooner or later, it's taking its toll.
But I'm sure there's some other things like maybe being a little more cautious as you're washing dishes and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Washing dishes or brushing your teeth, turn it off. Just use a little bit. You wouldn't do that at the gas pump. Think as if you're at the gas pump and how much it costs. You wouldn't be running it out on the ground. So we need to think about water like that.
That's a good point. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, if we don't want to just pour it on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if it could soak back in, because that's one way that wells replenish is through, if we were to have rain. You were talking about the playa lakes and how they help replenish water supplies. You might tell people what a playa lake is in case they don't know.
Playas, in my area, there's several of them. There's lots of them. I think more than any place in New Mexico. They collect the water, and it gets so saturated that it goes back into the water system. My house, for example, usually has 2 gallons a minute. In a drought, it can get down lower, but if there's water in my playas around there, I can get up to 3 gallons a minute. And it replenishes our system.
Okay. And Playa Lake is just like more often a depression?
Yeah, it's just a big depression.
That collects
I would think
water
they
when
were
it rains?
probably springs years ago, my own opinion, but they just collect it and it seeps back in slowly.
Yeah, instead of running off when it rains.
Instead of running off.
And I think there are a lot of playas around this part of the, and it's sort of similar to our livestock producers who have dirt tanks.
Yes.
They build those to sort of act like a playa lake too.
Yes.
And collect that runoff so they can water their cattle. And so definitely we need to have rain, but we also need to conserve our water so we're not using it, because we actually have communities in our area that are struggling with water.
Oh, yes.
And you were talking about them having to really conserve because they don't have their city wells don't have enough water.
Yes.
And then, so you said, I think, something about when we were just visiting, like most of the wells around our part of the county or country are like just 100 feet deep or something like that.
Yes.
But some of these communities that are running out of water, you're having to go deeper?
Yes, some of them, like Portales, their wells used to be 80 to 90. Now you go to 125.
To try to find water.
To try to find water. And Clovis is like 400 to 440 feet. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the elevation difference between Clovis and Portales, it's exact same. You do the math, the water's at the same level.
Okay. So, and of course, it's more expensive to drill deeper, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. way more expensive. Bigger pumps, more wire, more pipe.
And so another thing we were talking about before we started was if our wells are shallower, like here in Quake County where they're not quite as deep, things that we put on the ground that get rained down into the ground can affect our water supply.
Yes, it all clicks in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
When your well gets low, your pump gets set lower towards the bottom because there's less water. And when you get it down to the bottom, you're collecting everything that's been entered into there over the years. So that's back to the testing the well. If you know you're at the bottom, maybe you should test it more.
Need to test it more for hard stuff,
Yes.
but also bacteria.
Yes, bacteria can be fixed, but fertilizers or anything like that might have entered, or salts, who knows,
Well, I can remember years and years ago, it was common practice to put oil on the, if you changed your oil at home, just pour it out on the ground. And I know that we had a big push not to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's not advisable.
Yes, because that was just, that was when I first started working for Extension, and we were really telling people, don't pour your stuff out on the ground. So what does water conservation mean to you?
Saving all you can, make it never drop count. Fix the leaks, don't let a tank run over. It's I'm the world's worst sometimes. I'll forget I turned the horse water on, and 20 minutes later, So
We've done that too.
Yeah.
My husband keeps saying, we need to get a float.
Floats fail. So, yeah.
But yes, we have done that as well.
Manage.
And what would the future look like if we don't take conservation more seriously?
It's gonna be less population. What are we gonna do without water? Everybody's gonna be moving away.
True. So we like to end our podcasts with some food for thought. And I already forgot which one we had picked out of my things, and I didn't start for some reason. So maybe we chose the last one. Was it thousands have lived without love, but not one without water?
That's true.
And that's true because it's just like air. We have to have air and we have to have water. Every one of our cells has to have water.
Yes.
And then, of course, the food we eat, the animals need to have water. And that whole system, you have to have water in order for to go up to the clouds, to make more rain, to make more water.
Water's life.
Yes. So this has been a really interesting discussion. We really appreciate you coming in and sharing your knowledge with us. And we have this special gift to thank you.
Well, thank you.
One of our Health IQ mugs. And we just really appreciate you taking your time to come down here to Quake County and tell us about keeping our wells safe, and make sure you get those tested.
Yeah.
And look for a water lab to do that. And we thank you all for joining us today as we learn more about this precious commodity. And be sure to come back for our next episode on another important health topic.
Special thanks to Cody Moberly. Our host was Brenda Bishop.
Health IQ podcast crew. Our director was Robert F. Hockaday. Our producers are Robert F. Hockaday and Joyce Runyon. Our camera operator, Robert F. Hockaday. Our second camera assistant, Joyce Runyon. This episode was edited by Robert F. Hockaday. Credit music was provided by David Morris. Funding for Health IQ provided by a New Mexico Better Together grant. Brought to you by the Quay County Health Council. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Quay County Health. If you have any content ideas, reach out to us by email healthikpodcast@gmail.com. More info about this topic and more available on our Health IQ blog, QCHEALTHCO.UNCIL.org.
This podcast was created solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for advice from a healthcare or mental health professional.